What's pretty obvious to everyone, I hope, is that there is masses of information hitting networks. There's masses of content. I was enjoying the last presentation, excuse me, to see that 90% of 320 million tablet users will have video on their tablets. So I made a calculation that's about 290 million. If you think what that means then in terms of traffic, over what networks? Is it a public network? Is it a 3G network? Is it a private network? Is it a company network? At the end of the day, we just don't know anymore, and trying to profile something has limited value because once you've done that, it changes. So what I'd like to do today is to go through how hopefully you can take away the Net Manager service, which is supported and driven by Ipanema, and in doing so, make sure that you control and get the best performance from your applications across the network, be that a private or a public environment. You could call that a cloud. From an Ipanema standpoint, we don't mind if it's mobile, we don't mind if it's fixed, we don't mind if it's Ethernet, MPLS, you name it, it's a network. What's important is the app works. I would also say to you that it's about business continuity. At the end of the day, the technology needs to align itself to make sure you can do your core business, be that selling more cars, selling more handphones, producing more trucks. Whatever your business is, Ipanema will guarantee the performance of those applications to business-driven objectives rather than perhaps some of the IT objectives. So let me just kick off with a very simple chart. And it's not the "these are all my customers" chart. This is what do all these organizations have in common. What I would suggest to you is that these organizations, and clearly this is a subset, are very, very similar to you folks in the room. These are our customers, but what I'd also like to impress upon you is that what these people have is a very, very diverse mix of applications, and they also have very, very diverse ways of consuming those applications as well. It could be over the cloud. The reality is that customers have applications, some of them still running on mainframes. One of my customers has a 26-year-old application they use for real estate management. And actually for them, it's the way they're going to stick until it dies and physically the machine stops. But at the end of the day, they still use internet-based applications as well. So let me just go on. What do they have in common? Well, they all have the following in common. And we've talked about this, you know, in the room, some of the presenters this morning. We talked about the video conferencing, which is clearly very prevalent. But putting video conferencing on the same network as a Citrix flow is an extremely challenging thing to do because it can take out your Citrix flows very readily. So what you need to do is to control it to make sure that your business critical applications get delivered in a timely manner, or it could be delivering a huge file over your network. That needs to happen in a timely way. So what we're seeing at the moment is consumptions in many forms. In terms of the network, well, you know, what network are you connecting to? I was using a 3G network over my phone to connect my computer. When I'm at home, I use the Shore Signal service from Vodafone, so I'm taking GSM over broadband. If I'm a dealership selling cars, I can have video streaming from the actual vendor. So Rover does a lot of lifestyle advertising, streaming over my corporate network, but I've still got to run my workshop applications. I've still got to run my financials. So getting that mix to work together without one impacting the other is absolutely key for the business continuity of any business. And no matter how much bandwidth you throw at it, you will still end up with issues if you don't control it in some way. And that's clearly what Ipanema is here to do in conjunction with BTL. So, some very simple questions. How do you guarantee the performance? How do you get visibility? How do you control things? And how do you actually get the right solution? Networks over the years, if we put a new app on the network, we've said, well, let's put a little bit more bandwidth on there, plus a bit more for good measure. And over 20 years, we've grown up, and we fill the networks up, and we will always fill the networks up, that's for sure, particularly as this huge explosion of content is emerging. So what I'd like to do is address these 3 questions, and in doing so, then come back to the clients that are actually using this in real life. And hopefully what you'll see is that this is a particular area where the current explosion of data and some of the very significant events is very, very timely. You may remember the royal wedding. I think everyone enjoyed it immensely. 100 million video streams hit the UK during that very limited period. Before that, we had the World Cup football, internet traffic in the UK tripled, and next year we've got the Olympic Games. So just think what that's going to do to our networks. So make sure your Citrix flows at 50K type feeds going across the network are protected, and that's what a lot of financial organizations are doing with us at the moment. So I think that fits for everyone. Okay, so how do we do it? This is a very simple slide. Rather than the IT departments telling the business tell the IT departments in the Ipanema type deployments. So what we do is we deploy software primarily onto a network. That tells you what the problem is potentially, tells you how your applications are performing today. You then set the objectives such that you are defining on an incredibly granular basis how that application will perform. And that could actually be that this gentleman down here at the front, he could be using the same application as me, but you'd have a different experience to it. Someone else in an HR department, for example, could want to look at Facebook. I may not be allowed to look at Facebook, and it will be defined per user if need be. So it's like class of service on steroids, I guess, is a very crude way of looking at it. So the Ipanema system is constantly learning. It sits there. It's constantly getting feedback. Networks change. You're going to get video streams hitting a network. Doesn't matter. We're going to push certain flows to the back. Clearly, the sensitivity with video or voice. So we would define all these parameters. It will get through. If there are physical limitations in the network, then what we would do is be able to see those limitations through the various portals that we have. And those portals can give you management information that you could actually use in a board presentation of saying this is how much network bandwidth you need to put in place. Or a CIO can have the application running on his iPhone, or it can be running in a NOC, and people can literally drill down onto specific feeds. And just to put a little bit of explanation down to the bottom there, ANS, or Autonomic Networking System, is our internal brain that drives this thing. So the bottom line is that the business sets the objectives. How do I want my SAP app to run? How do I want my supply chain app to run? Based on what it's been doing already, and then we make sure that this stuff all works together. The way we do that is the following. Very, very simple. We have the applications on the left-hand side. We've gone through the visibility exercise. We've defined what's really important. We then assign priorities. You can see in the chart here the performance per site, where you've got red, yellow, and green. You've got various impacts on the site. So, for example, you can see the SAP on site D is not working well. That's a problem. So what we would then do is push control. And this is how we control the applications over networks. Public network, private network. We'll gladly explain the detail after the session today. We're at the back if that can be of interest to you. The bottom line is that we've actually pushed some of the stuff down. So now Skype and YouTube in the middle chart is actually still not performing terribly well. So now it's a business decision. I stress it's a business decision. What's the best thing to do? Buy more technology or buy more bandwidth? Because one could be cheaper than the other. So the bottom line is the business is driving the way this performs. So now, if you move it to the far end, we've now put in place either more bandwidth, or we've put in place some other technologies, and that now we've got all these applications running in a way that is consistent. So we have a natty little name for our system. It's called Salsa. And you can see there some of the reports. We touched on it a few moments ago. What you can see in the top right-hand corner, and I'm mindful that obviously this is away from you, is the heat map, as we call it. So you can see You've got sites, applications within the site. If you have problems, you can drill down. This is typically what an engineer would use. And you can see in the bottom left there, you've got the ubiquitous iPhone, and you can see a sort of a measurement of the performance of these applications against the business set profiles. I'm not an engineer, but I thought this would be of interest to a number of you. One of our customers is an oil exploration company, and they use our system to have either traffic going over their own MPLS network or using the internet. From our perspective, we don't really mind, it's just a network. But what we would do is make sure you adopt the route which is the most beneficial to the performance of the app. So what you've got here is the ability to actually have a branch environment where you can fire up the network from either route. And obviously this can save considerable amounts of money, but actually in some places it's actually better to use the internet than MPLS networks. Not always granted, but if you're an oil exploration company and you do business in challenging environments, this is a particularly powerful thing to do. So I think I may have saved rather a considerable amount of time here, but I wanted to finish up with unashamedly some customers that we've been privileged to work with, and I'm actually going to just focus on one rather than take undue amounts of time, and that is Barclays Bank. So Barclays Bank uses Ipanema to control its branch applications, and I'm not sure if any of you bank with Barclays. I do. What they're doing is they're pushing the customer interface for mortgages and those sorts of products into the branch rather than call centers or remote. They want to push it back into the branch as it used to be in the olden days when you used to go into your bank manager and apply for a loan or apply for your mortgage. So to do that, they've obviously got a customer in front of an advisor, and if that application doesn't work properly, that's really not an acceptable outcome. So they've used Ipanema in their environment, and you can see there's a handful of devices, 6 devices within their data centers. All the rest is software. We call it a software tele-appliance. So what we've got is 2,500 branches, all their applications controlled using a software suite that sits on top of their network. So that's what Ipanema does. What I'd like to do is just finish up. I appreciate the session is quite short, but I sense that people want to get out to lunch and to the motor car racing. What we're seeing in the marketplace is that there is truly an explosion of data onto networks, which is arguably a throwaway comment, but the way it's happening is totally unpredictable. Even companies that lock down everything, bolt it down, secure it, just the trends in how data is being pulled across those networks is very unpredictable. One of these speakers before me talked about the iPhone not having or an iPad not having an instruction manual, and now it's YouTube and Microsoft doing this. If you're in your corporate environment, the reality is that you just don't know when those flows are going to hit the network. So no matter how much bandwidth you buy and how secure your network is, you still need to control it. And I would argue that from a business perspective, the business should drive that, not the technologist and companies like ours. So we give the tools. Britannic call it Net Manager. We're privileged to work with Richard and the team, and that's where I'd like to finish. And I thank you for your attention. Thanks very much indeed. Bye-bye.